back to Live Now with Veenu Keller and Chuck Hogan. We want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Zingo TV is a free app that can be downloaded on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all TVs 2016 and forward. Live Now is a show all about finding the synergy and body-minded spirit. Please join us as we tackle intense topics of conversation that will spur your mind, steer your soul, and give you some direction. With that said, we are excited to dive into tonight's topic with you. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Live Now with Veenu and Chuck. We are so excited to bring another amazing topic and something that, one of the things that Chuck and I love to do is bring you guys real topics that you guys can dive into in your life now. You don't have to wait or say, oh, wait, this doesn't apply to me, because guess what? What we talk about applies to everyone, kids, families. I would say your dogs, if you know how to train them, but you could be their accountability partner, because that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about accountability. Make your dog your accountability partner. You kind of think like, my dogs get me up every morning to go to the bathroom. That's kind of accountability, right? To get up.
It is. And they let you know when they want to go outside. They let you know when they want to go for a walk.
Right.
Now that I really think about it, I love this. That's you know what? Don't let the cat out of the bag, because this could be a whole nother business model that we haven't even discussed yet. So thank you for that, Veenu. And it really is true. Yeah, we were like pondering over. It's like, well, we talk about so many different things, and yet what's the one universal thing that really allows you to make progress? And it's real simple. It's accountability to yourself and others. Mm-hmm. And I was reminded today that the lowest standard that you can keep is lying to yourself. It's like the lowest standard. Why? Because if you let yourself get away with all the things and stuff that you need to be doing and need to be being, and yet you just brush it to the side, you'll give everyone else a pass too.
Yeah. It's funny when you said that about lying to yourself. I've always wondered, if I lie to myself or if I lie to anyone, there is a sense, I'm going to call it guilt, because I don't know whatever emotion to call it. Mm-hmm. But I get this sense of guilt in me. It's almost like an alarm going off that you're not being truthful. You're not being truthful.
Yes.
And I've even created that alarm to go off when I stretch the truth, perhaps, or, when I would lie about something that, like, even to my kids, like, did you run that red light? I'm like, no, it was yellow for a long time. It was great.
You blinked.
Yeah. Like, oh no, I made it. I mean, even things like that really doesn't make that big of a deal. I have trained myself to be like, liar. Like, it goes off of me. And I know my highest value, one of my highest values, is honesty.
Yes.
Matter of fact, I have it tattooed to myself, the word honesty. And what I didn't realize is that as much as I put effort into being honest to so many people out in the world, the one person I continued to lie to was myself. And I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Yes. And thank you for your vulnerability and honesty. And I will say, I know for me, when it comes into even my periphery, that my energy drops. And it's it's kind of strange. So right when you were saying that, and I was like going, because you can feel it, like when you're incongruent, and it's like going, so they go, oh, is it a lie? And I go, a half truth, a white lie. I said, you know what it is? It's incongruency. And is one of my number one values is honesty. And right behind it is accountability.
Oh, mine's respect.
Own your stuff, which we're kind of circling the sun of self-respect, self-confidence, self-worth, and presence and truth, right? Yeah. And so when we start to get to this space of going, you know what? why am I not feeling like energetic and upbeat? And I go, because you're being incongruent.
Right.
And it was so interesting. We were breaking down and having this men's group session today. And one of the requirements of this is the accountability of not having any vices in your sphere of influence for the 7 weeks that you're engaged in this curriculum. Now, what does that mean? No smoking, no vaping, no drinking, no
YouTubing, like
no, I mean, like it's removing all the vices
that allow you to escape.
that allow people to escape. And this is and I'm talking on all levels. So if it's like biological, sexual, anything, it's like you are going to drop it at the doorstep
For 7 weeks.
and for 7 weeks and be accountable. And it was interesting because we put it out as an offer and like going, if this is insurmountable for you,
speak now or forever ever hold your peace.
yeah, it's like because the hand of truth will come down and smite you, and so lightning will happen. So and to your point, Veenu, it's like so. And when I started to think about these things, I go, I was having this conversation. I was like, you know what? Alcohol has never solved any problem.
Mm-mm.
Vaping, smoking, pot, any nutraceuticals. If you're in an altered state, and here's the reason why I go, because on a continual basis. So I say there's differences between needing things that serve you and needing things that become an escape.
I don't know. I also, just to piggyback off that, I feel like when you use things to induce your mindset or a moment of healing, so you're doing it with absolute purpose. You're not doing to escape. You're actually doing it to deeper dive.
And again, there's a difference between something that's a nutrient and a distraction. And
Right.
so it's like, I'm not going to tell someone to not take their vitamins. And they go, oh, but you said, and it's like, wait, supplementation, self-care is essential. So
Well, I also do I do plant medicine, you know,
right.
but it's like very monitored. There's a facilitator. It's not like, hey, let's just go around and do this and let's see what happens. It's like there's structure to the plant medicine.
Right.
And I'm not doing to escape. I'm actually doing it for a deep dive. And I think that's the difference. Like even with marijuana, I don't smoke marijuana. However, I know several people that use that for anxiety, like social anxiety. And they can do that. They rather do that, which is a natural plant, versus taking a synthetic thing made in a lab that can be habit forming.
Understood.
Needing to take it. So I just, for our listeners out there that, you know, when we're talking about this, it's understand what Chuck is saying is like, get rid of the vices that allow you to escape the stuff that you're dealing with in life.
The distractions.
Correct.
And that is a very different modality.
Yeah.
It's amazing how you'll start to get your faculties back.
Yeah.
And right. And that you may have created new synapses that you didn't even know by simply doing 3 things. And one is hydration. Most people are dehydrated and they're walking around this way. That for the health of it. Number 2, nutrition. Are you getting enough energy in your body? Because in order to engage in anything that serves you requires energy. And most people are running at an endocrine deficit, which means that their mitochondria are not healthy. They are cellularly poor in their gut health. And they might be carrying around, you know, this thing that we call a couple kilos or a couple lbs extra. And that they just feel foggy all the time. And they're like, oh, well, that's why I take the other stuff. And I go, okay. So is it actual fog, or is it self-induced because you are not taking care of self?
Right.
To your point. And this is where life becomes very subjective because you know what the truth is for you. And accountability isn't about what someone else is holding you to as far as the letter of the law, because there are a lot of laws that are out there that seem silly and you're like going, not on my watch.
Right.
And on the other side, it's like going, but my universal truths for
Right.
me, aren't even the same universal truths that are for my kids. They have their truth in them. I would pray and hope that the value system that we impart with one another through conversation is upheld. Yet they still have their needs that need to be met.
Well, I think that's a great understanding also is how do we get our kids to uphold the values? How do
Mm,
we hold them accountable to the values that we find important? And how are we open to allowing our kids' values to shift? Because they will. Like my values are not the same as my mom's values.
oh,
But yet she very much held me accountable to respect was like number one in our house. Like you did not talk back. It just you didn't do it. And then cleanliness. She says we may be poor, but we're not dirty.
that's
And so there was never a dish in the sink. You could eat off our grant. We wouldn't eat off the floor, but you could because they were always clean, you know? So, but those, as much as I respect those values and they are part of my repertoire, I would say they aren't my top values. Like
mm,
it's allowing that to shift. But in order for our kids to even know what values are, we have to hold them accountable
yes.
to what we are teaching them, what we are guiding them.
I remember as a kid, Vinu, and my dad, I asked him because this was something that came up in conversation a lot. Accountability,
Right.
as far as honor, respect, being a good person. And I asked my parents, I said, so what's the definition of accountability? And they said, you're going to find this really funny, Chuck, but it means that you are actually aspiring to do the right thing for the right reasons in
Mm,
that moment that align with who you are. And that's
mm,
accountability. It's like, so if you've made a mistake, that you're in alignment and that you actually divulge that you had some culpability, some action, some fault. If you've done something great, that you're accountable for it, that and so some people might call that celebration. And yet it seems like accountability has been used where it has this connotation of being like this absolute rule of law. It's like, oh, you weren't accountable, so we're going to slap you on the wrist and we're going to take away your things and stuff. And dad said, you know what it really is? It's risk and reward.
I like that.
And I was
I
like,
like that.
wow. He goes, you know me. He goes, you know me, son. I got to keep it simple. And I go, yeah, dad, I appreciate that. And I said, mom's was more elegant, but yours was really simple. He goes, listen, it's risk and reward. You do this, you get that.
Right.
You do this, you might get something else than what you thought you were going to get. And is that right or wrong? And I was like, oh, now you're confusing me. You just took simple and made it complex. And I was like, okay, wait. So there's right and wrong, and there's risk and reward. And he goes, yeah. He goes, are you willing to risk doing something when you know it's not right? And I was like,
Mm,
oh, now that you put it that way, I get the whole right and wrong thing.
right.
Right? Because you're like, going, I said no cookies before dinner. So if you're messing around and taking cookies, the accountability and the risk for doing so, you may not like.
Mm,
I was like, why did I get an extra helping of Brussels sprouts?
right.
So you're like, going, dang it. But they're good for you. And I'm like going, yeah. And I love Brussels sprouts now. So just for all you vegetarian Brussels sprout lovers out there,
I like him too now. That's so weird.
I just made them last night and they were delish.
I never used to like them. I'm going to be honest.
It was a hard pass. And I was like, is balsamic vinegar something new? Because we use this balsamic vinegar glaze to make them. And it's just like, oh, they're so good. Anyway, so I'm accountable to my Brussels sprouts. I will not make poor Brussels sprouts. I will not do it. And you said something beautifully earlier, and that was this whole thing about accountability.
Mm,
our parents really tried to instill this ideology in us.
Right.
And I look at it now and I go, there are so many more distractions than ever before. And you brought up the most perfect one, my friend, and that was social media. Now, how'd you learn about this show? You may have learned about it through social media. You may have learned about it through, a media blast or our feeds or in some way, shape, or form. And here's what's interesting about that. There's no such thing as bad information.
Right.
It's just information. Where you look to get your information, where you look, and there's a difference in quality, there's a difference in texture, but knowledge is knowledge. And when people say knowledge is power, I go, they're in some instances not the people who are exercising any knowledge.
Right.
They're listening to it and it's going in one ear and out the other. There's others that they're literal. You said this, I'm accountable, Chuck. I followed everything that you said. And I was like, going, yeah, but chronology and time and space and where you're living makes a difference as well. So don't just think it's one thing. There's many things that go along with this.
Right.
So, Veenu, you work with so many families and so many people. What do you find is one of the most taxing areas of accountability for folks in today's climate?
I'm going to tell you, it's parents not just holding your kid accountable, but being consistent with it.
Thank you.
Consistency with accountability. So if I'm like, you have got to get up by 6:30 in the morning because we are running late. And, tomorrow you're going to get up 6:30 because I'm going to make you get up 6:30. So it's me holding them accountable to getting up at 6:30. And then all of a sudden my alarm goes off 3 days later. I'm like, oh gosh, I don't feel like getting up. You know what? They should be able to get up on their own.
Right.
And then I'm not holding them accountable to get up. And at 6:45, I'm getting them up. And then I'm like, well, you should have got up at 6:30. Well,
and this is the risk and reward thing. So thank you for this, because it was one of those scenarios. I remember as a kid, if I slept in at all, and it was like 5 a.m. wake up call. Like, no joke, military dad, Japanese, educator mom. I'm like, okay, discipline was not short in the Hogan household. And just saying, as Asians, we understand this. So thank you.
I get it.
We do. It's a fact of life. So here's the other side of that, though. If we were behind schedule, it started to push everything else in our life back. And so there was this trickle-down effect that the risk and reward factor had for non-accountability.
Right.
Because now it was an inconvenience to who? Not just you.
To the family.
Everybody.
Right. Right.
And then I'll never forget, I had one of the most valuable lessons of my childhood. When I was in school, we walked to school.
So did I.
It was 5-6 blocks away, but they were long blocks. You're like, oh, it still took 15, 20 minutes to get home. And I remember that I was running behind one day. I don't know what happened, but I think I may have not been feeling well, but I remembered I had an exam. And it's like, I got to get to school. And I went to this parochial elementary school, so Catholic elementary school, and I had the corduroy jeans and the white shirt and this little sweater, the little cardigan and my backpack. And this thing weighed a ton because they were serious about homework back then. And I remember, and I'm like going, if I run the whole way there, I can make it and I won't be tardy. But this backpack, I'm maybe dripping wet, 55 pounds at this point in my life. And this backpack probably weighed 30 pounds. I'm not embellishing. There was every book known to man in this thing.
Because regardless whether you had homework or not, you had to bring your textbook home. And people don't know what textbooks are anymore, but I will never forget them.
Oy vey.
I have back poems because of it.
But when your kids get to college, they remind you because the books are $200 a piece. So I ran the whole way there. I get there. I'm sweating. I passed 4 or 5 people. And I'm like, you better pick it up, man, because you're going to be late. And I get to school. And I had this overwhelming feeling of happiness. And I couldn't wait to get home that day to share that with my mom and dad. And my dad goes, "You seem chipper." I said, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "But you were running late today." And I go, "Uh-huh."
Mm.
And he goes, "Well, what happened?" I go, "I ran to school." And he goes, "You what?" I said, "I ran to school." And he goes, "Were you late?" I said, "No, sir. I made it before the first bell. I got in. I sat in my seat. I was a hot mess. I was sweaty. You could hear me the whole way because that corduroy was just the whole way there. I said, I sound like, yeah, it probably smelled like burnt cotton by the time I got there because my corduroy was rubbing." And he goes, "Okay." And he goes, "Is that why you're so giddy?" I said, "You know what, Dad? I was accountable today."
Mm.
And he goes, "Give me a hug, buddy." He goes, "Thank you for sharing that story." He goes, "Something that," and he reminded me of this like decades later. He goes, "You remember that day you came home and you were so giddy and happy?" He goes, "And at first," he goes, "I got to admit, I was just going to make light of it." He goes, "But I realized it was such a profound experience for you because you found in yourself self accountability. And it wasn't based on getting in trouble." He goes, "Because you know they would have given you a pass. You weren't feeling well. You had a note from us as well." I said, "I know,
But
but
it
I
felt
but I knew I could."
right. And I think that for our listeners, Chuck, it's important that we understand accountability is literally doing what you say you're going to do.
That's it.
Like if you say you're going to go to the gym,
Do it.
you'll say, well, I need an accountability partner. What does that mean? It means that you're going to force yourself, if you will, to go because someone's holding you accountable. So what has to happen for you to keep your word to yourself? What has to happen? What has to happen? And for you, Chuck, it sounds like it was that feeling elated that you did
Mm.
it and that you got to tell your dad because you knew that was one of his values.
This
And
accomplishment felt amazing, and
right.
it was simple.
But I don't know, and I don't know because I didn't know you then, but I don't know if you were running for that reason or if it was to see if you could do it. And when you did it was to tell your dad, I did it. Like
My
recognition, like I did it because that's what kids want. We want our parents' recognition. And it's like we want the recognition of showing them, like, hey, I got it. I got what you're teaching me.
right.
I want you to know I got it.
It's so funny you say that, Veenu, because I remember as a kid, and you'd hear like people talking, which kids do all the time, and I didn't. I was just listening, and I'd hear these kids, and they go, "Man, this guy's so fast," or "That girl's so quick." And I'm like thinking to myself, going, "They're all right, but I could outrun them in a millisecond." And then I wouldn't say anything, or it didn't make a difference what it was. If it was ball tag, if it was dodgeball, whatever the case might be, I would do flips, cartwheels, all kinds of stuff, so I wouldn't get hit by a dodgeball. True story. Slide, do whatever I needed to do. But I was always one of the last kids. And people are like, "Why?" I said, "Because that challenge for me was me being accountable to my ability to be able to move my body that way." And
Right.
people go, "That seems so silly." It's no different than doing well on an exam.
Yeah. And just to keep it simple, like my alarm clock is my accountability.
Yes.
I asked my husband all the time, I'm like, are you going to set an alarm? He's like, I haven't set an alarm forever. Because my husband has the power of telling his brain when he wants to wake up and give or take a minute or two. But most of the time, it's like spot on. He wakes up at that time. Me, I need accountability of my alarm clock, especially when you got to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning for a flight. So for our listeners, what are you doing to create the accountability in your life?
Mm.
Do you have reminders? Do you have alarm? Do you have, a note to yourself? A to-do list? Like, because what are to-do lists? It's accountability to yourself. It's like, this is what I need to do. This is what I want to accomplish today. And so it really is tuning into what are the accountability tools that I have in my life now. And to go a step further, ask yourself, what am I not holding myself accountable for? What am I not doing? What is getting left behind? What is the upset in my family because I'm not doing what I'm saying I'm going to do? Where am I disappointing my kids? Where am I disappointing myself?
Mm.
that is a great place to really look at what do you need accountability for in your life. And if you don't have a buddy or a partner to do that, and I highly recommend creating your own self accountability.
Yes.
And for me, alarms work amazing. So I set alarms for different things in my life that have to happen, especially on weekends, because I don't work on weekends. That is dedicated to my kids, and my husband. However, sometimes there's a situation that occurs that I have to take a client, or I get to take a client, sorry, verbiage. I get to get on a call with a client or a new client or whatever, and it has to be on a Saturday and Sunday. And that is a has to. um, and I will forget because my mind is already set in family mode and it already knows you don't work on weekends. And I had to train my brain on that, by the way, because you know me, Chuck, like I would just go 7 days a week. It filled me up and I didn't realize it was taking so much from my family. So now I have like really retrained my brain that weekends are my family's unless it's a must. So I will set an alarm. I will set 2 alarms. I'll set one 30 minutes before it and I will set one 5 minutes before it.
Yep.
To make sure no matter what I'm doing, I'm going to get myself engaged in being of service to whoever, whatever coaching client or whatever call I'm getting ready to take. So for me, alarms work for my self accountability. Also, telling myself, this is what you're going to do tomorrow. What are you excited about of it? Like, how are you going to have fun with it? What are you going to get from it? So setting a sense of questions that really set my mind being excited to be able to do what I get to do the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the tips that I do for self accountability.
I love it. It comes down to a really simple requirement. You need to know what you need.
Right.
Right. So like Veenu and I don't get on these sessions without having a beverage, without having a few minutes of moments, if you will, even to reset self.
Food.
That's it. I mean, if you don't have the energy to show up, you won't. And I know that sounds so simple, but there are people, and you're watching this right now, and you're starving. You're starving nutrition. You're starving from dehydration. You're starving from sleep deprivation.
Energy, lack of energy.
Yeah, and we're grateful that you're here. We have a friend, Joseph McClendon III, and one of his favorite things is he goes, you have this thing, and you know what it has in it? Alarms. He sets alarms for everything.
He does.
I'll never forget that. I heard this from him like a decade ago. And I love this because I'm like going, it's a smartphone, not a stupid phone, not just a web surfing device. I said, it's there for your benefit. Mm-hmm. Your list is there for your benefit. That's not just for someone else. That's for you too. Because and someone said, oh no, I use those just for my kids, Chuck. And I go, oh really? So how do you feel when you're being a great supporter of your children? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You feel good? You feel great? You feel complete? You feel whole? Awesome. So to your point, Veenu, getting to and having to have very different metrics as far as our sorting mechanism.
Right.
And yet accountability is exactly that. We have a very dear friend and mentor, Dean Innes, and he says, eat the frog first. Why? Because there are some things in your life that you're accountable for that you may not love. Get it out of the way. Make it happen.
Right.
There are some days I do not feel like going running. But it's on my schedule. And I'm like, oh, could I lift it? No, it says running. And there's a reason for it, because there are things that are sequential. There are things that you don't have to change the oil in your car every day. But when it says that it's due because it's scheduled, that actually helps feed the capacity that you have to have a healthy vehicle.
Right.
If you have it scheduled that this is your snack time and you're on a nutritional program, listen to yourself. It's your program. It's your to-do list. The accountability is the opportunity to step up and into the experience that you've planned for yourself.
Right. Right. And I would also invite the listeners to think about what are the rewards that I get to reap
Mm,
when I accomplish what I want to do? Like, I know going to the gym sometimes, a lot of times, is probably not on my priority, but I'll tell you what I feel like after I leave the gym is accomplished.
yes.
And that's a feeling that a lot of people, including myself, don't get to feel every day, like that sense of accomplishment. And what makes it feel even more like an accomplishment is because I didn't want to do it and I did it anyway,
Hmm.
and the feeling I get from it. And so it's really like, what is that feeling that you want to have inside of you? And what is it going to take to achieve that? And what's going to keep you accountable to doing that so you can achieve it?
Yes. Yes.
You know?
You know, a big part of this is being able to effectively prioritize.
Yeah.
And right, I mean, it's so huge. And this sorting ideology, because by my own admission, there was a time in my life when I didn't sort by what my needs were. I sorted by what everyone else's needs were.
Mm.
And oh, and there's such huge consequences to this, because you start to find that you don't feel healthy, you don't feel strong, you don't feel centered, you don't feel guided. You feel like you're living in response to everything rather than being able to even plan. Because who are you planning for? Everybody else. At whose expense? And I said, well, at that point in my life, it was primarily at my expense. But you think in your 20s and 30s, and even into your 40s, that you're unstoppable. And then I hit 50 and I was like going, well, I'm still unstoppable, but why do things hurt?
Right.
I'm like going, no, they don't hurt bad, but I was like going, I got a little hitch in my giddy up, and I don't understand where that came from. This is, it shouldn't happen after taking out the trash
I
can.
noticed that I have some kneecaps all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It hurts to kind of climb those stairs sometimes. Yeah.
You. Like going,
Where did that come from?
hey, my encounters with the chiropractor were much shorter when I was in my 20s and 30s.
They were. They were.
They were. He's like going, full session. I said, dude, I need the tune up.
Tune up. I was going to say we need a tune up. I love it.
From the top of my head to the tips of my toes. Crack me. This, for all of you that are listening, may seem a little silly. It is so poignant. And when you get this clear understanding that your accountability is a gift, it's an absolute gift. It is literally the universe's way of you getting to celebrate you. I know that sometimes we pray for autopilot. Sometimes we pray for, let Jesus is at the wheel. I'm just going to give it up and he's going to drive. And I'm like, that's awesome. And I'll also remind you that he didn't put fuel in the car. He doesn't hit the brakes. He may steer on the right path. That still requires some of your input. So be an active participant in your own salvation and prioritize what you really need in your life. Because if you're listening to this conversation, you're like going, I don't even know what that looks like. Then you have a deeper challenge. And I've been there. One of the things that Veenu and I have learned, and I won't speak on my sister's behalf, but I know her very well, is there have been times in our lives when we didn't prioritize our wellness.
Yeah.
Right? And the cost for that is your sanity. Because you'll start to distort, delete, and generalize information just so you don't go bananas.
Well, I'll also add to that, Chuck, is that if you're not going to hold yourself accountable for your health, don't let the hospital, because all of a sudden, when you get sick, when you're in the hospital, they're going to hold you accountable.
Oh.
And so you have a choice. You have a choice every day to figure out what your accountability partner is. It your alarm or is it someone? And I always tell my clients, if it helps you to have someone else, then reach out, find that person that is your raving fan that wants to see you succeed and say, look, I'm looking for an accountability partner. I'm part of another group, Joseph McClendon's group, where I get to be the instructor for coaching. And I saw someone put a post today saying, I just joined the Neuroencoding Institute and I'm so excited. I am looking for an accountability buddy to hold me accountable for doing the course, getting certified, and practicing the coaching. And I said, how amazing is that? First of all, to have a group that you could just be so vulnerable and say, hey, look, I could do it by myself, but I don't want to. Right. Who's done this? Who's doing it? Who wants the like-mindedness that I have that wants to do this with me? And to me, that's aiding in your own rescue. And that's what I would really want to support our listeners today, if you're rehearing this or rewatching it, is that what are you doing to aid in your own rescue? You know, when you find your accountability buddy, again, whether it's an alarm, your dog, a friend, make sure that you're reaching to the right place, because that in itself is aiding in your own rescue. Don't wait for someone else to say, hey, you're not showing up. You're not showing up for work. You're not showing up on time. This isn't getting done. You know what? I want to leave you because everything you say you're going to do, you're not getting it done, and I can't do this anymore. Don't wait for that to keep you in check of what you need to do.
Yes.
Aid in your own rescue. See what simple things that Chuck and I are saying tonight that you can implement today to make that change. And I promise you, do it for 7 days. Just do it for 7 days and see what changes in your life. See what happens to change in your life when you start to hold yourself accountable through any of the techniques that Chuck and I have talked about tonight, because you will see a difference in your life. And then you will realize how simple this is and how easy it is to follow through and what the rewards are that you get.
That's beautiful, Veenu. What came to my heart when you were saying this was, what are the standards that you keep? It doesn't mean that you have to be this uber high elevated level of existence. It means, are you breathing on a regular basis? And people go, wait, what? I'm breathing. If I'm speaking, I'm breathing, right? And I said, yes, intentionally. Because here's the other thing. Most people don't have enough moisture in their body, hydration. Most people don't have enough nutrition. And most people don't have enough oxygen in their body. So the human condition is such that left to your own devices, you'll do the least amount that you have to do in order to get what you believe you need. So when Veenu says, be deliberate, be accountable, be vulnerable, I love when people espouse and ask someone to hold them to a higher standard. Because they're going, I'm in a new environment. I'm learning how to be a coach. I'm learning how to elevate myself. And it's like, okay, you're learning new things and stuff. And that means you're not done cooking yet. And here's the secret sauce. None of us are.
No.
Regardless of what you think you know, there's always another level. There's always a new distinction, realization. And so when I hear people go, oh, there's only so many patterns, and I go, not true.
Right. And we need to start getting out of our own way as well. To get out of our own way and realize, I was just talking to someone that I was connected to, and we were talking today, and I said, I listened to this quote so long ago, but it's still so true. It says, God's not done writing your story, so stop trying to steal his pen.
Beautiful.
And I was like, that is so true.
Yes.
Like, we try to think like, oh, I could just do it tomorrow. Oh, what's the big deal? And it's like, are we rewriting the way we think our life needs to go? Or can we show up for ourselves? Because how are we showing up for our kids or anybody else when we don't know how to show up for ourselves?
Jesse Eisler had a podcast, and he was talking about the engagements with his mom and dad. And he goes, they're getting on in age. So he asked, how many more summers do we get to go all vacation together? And you could feel a very stoic energy change in him, and you could see it on his face. And it was like, wow, she's at
Mm.
movies. Another 10, maybe 15, hopefully 20. And I only go there for this reason. If you have a to-do in your life of someone that you're looking to connect with, someone that's near and dear to you, someone that you love and adore and appreciate, don't wait to be accountable for the opportunity to be able to make that connection. To Venu's point, don't put off. Don't put off. Live in now. Live now.
Right. Right.
Hello.
I say that to my families that I work with, like when they're having such a struggle with their kids, I say, how many more summers do you have with your kids?
Mm,
Right? Because like the twins are turning 12 next month. You know, we
yeah,
only probably have 6 summers, if that, because now summers, as they get into be teenagers, they don't want to do family things. They want to go out with their friends. They want to do things with their friends. But let's just say 18, right? Till they're 18. That's 6 summers left that we have.
right.
That's going to go in a blink. And while you're saying that, I was thinking of my grandma who's 92, I think, and she has Alzheimer's, and sometimes she remembers us and sometimes she doesn't. And I'm thinking, do we even have another summer left? Do we even get one more with her? And that's why we do make it a priority to go every March to Idaho. You know that we go there every March for our kids' break that they get from school, and we're lucky. And we were just telling our kids the other day how lucky you are that you have a relationship with your great grandmother.
No, it's priceless.
Yes.
It's priceless. To your point, Venu, because when Jesse was giving this podcast and he goes, listen, he goes, that's my mom. He goes, you know what hit even closer to home? He goes, my son. He said, my son is going to be going off to college in 3 years. In 3 years. And he goes, oh my gosh. He goes, no more family dinners? He goes, ish. He goes, maybe when he's home or he's visiting from school or, he's home on break. He goes, but I'm not going to squander what we have now. He goes, this is crazy. So I'm going to prioritize and I'm going to be accountable to making sure that I'm scheduling that time. So here's something operational that Vito and I absolutely espouse and live by. If you don't freaking schedule it, you're never going to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And scheduling it is part of accountability, by the way. It's a commitment that I am committed to doing that. That's accountable. What are you committing to? And what are you following through? And what are you consistent in?
Yes.
All subcategories of accountability, buddy. Like that's it.
And we're going to remind you that the most valuable currency, it's not Bitcoin, it's not gold, it's not even cash dollars, it's your time. Who you spend your time with and how you spend it, because it is a currency, will enrichen your life. So prioritize the activities and the people that really create value in your world.
Right.
Where your impact, where the more hearts you can touch, the more minds you can reach, the more souls you can help influence and resonate with. Because that will be your legacy.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because as you're saying that, Chuck, I'm like literally thinking like, who are the people I surround myself with? Mm-hmm. All the people that I would say are in my tight circle, which I call the heart, my heart of my friends, and even like closer friends, I would say all of them are like me. It's they say what they mean and they mean what they say. Yes. That means that if I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up unless I'm sick or someone's dying, right? So we got to give some grace. But if they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And honestly, that is who I surround myself with. I don't surround myself with people that are like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then it never gets done. And yeah, I'm going to do it. And it never gets done. Those aren't my people.
No.
They're not my people. And when people say, what's your secret sauce from going from making $25,000 a year, raising 2 kids with no child support, to having the life that I live now? The number one thing is I held myself accountable.
Yes.
I wanted it more than anybody else wanted it for me. And in order to do that, I had to have accountability to myself because there was no one. Remember, I said single mom. There was no one waking me up to say, hey, are you going to do it today? Hey, do you want that life today? Hey, what are you going to do to get that life today? I had zero, zit, nada. It
Yep.
was me showing up for me at a time I didn't even know I could do it, but I did it anyway.
And that is so rich, and thank you for sharing that, Venu, because it really comes down to it was a must for you. It was an absolute need, and this is such a freaky little distinction, and we say this often. Most people are chasing wants and not meeting their needs
All the time.
all the time, and I know that it's the same thing. One's just a higher level. No, need is I need air. I need water, I need food, I need shelter, I need love and connection. How you want to get those things is a whole different. Oh, you may like your oxygen to have bergamot and sandalwood smell in your house.
Well, and that's just it. Your want is your vehicle to get that need.
That's right.
It's just the vehicle to get it. If you're a workaholic, if you're an alcoholic, any of that, any of the
Right,
that really is your vehicle to get a need met.
right.
And so it's making sure, again, it goes back to who are you spending your time with? That's why I love YBL. Like, I don't know anyone, and I don't know everyone yet, but there's an assumption just from the few that I would say half of them that I've spent time with or I've met, they're all go-getters.
Oh yeah.
None of them are just sitting around going, yeah, maybe I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. And then not show up.
Not this group.
No, it really is that they're an accountability group.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, you were talking about Jeremy today that you're doing that group with him. He just offered to meet with me. I did. And all the time he's like, hey, rock star, what do you got for me to see? And I'm like, wow, like he's not going to let me forget what we talked about. He's not going to let me forget to take action.
Yes.
And he does it out of love and authenticity, where I didn't even ask for that accountability and he shows up for you. Those are the quality of people that we have at YBL. And that's why I love being a part of that group. Yeah. And again, you don't have to do accountability by yourself. Well, find a group of people, find a person, find an alarm clock. They have apps now. They have apps that now are your accountability buddy.
Sure.
There's no excuse why you can't do it. And I just want to say, if you want more tips and trades and tricks and strategies, please come find me and Chuck. We're both on social media. We would be happy to get on a call with you. Let us take you through this even deeper, looking at your own life of how you can find the accountability or any of the strategies we talk about frequency in our bodies and energy and keeping true to your words and discipline. We are here for you. Please reach out to Chuck or myself.
Absolutely, Veenu. And again, it's your mindset is based on your heart set. So get your heart right. Legit, get your heart right. Get in that beautiful heart space where you're not judging everything. And in the words of my beautiful sister here, get curious instead of critical. I listen. And what you will start to find is a sense of freedom and forgiveness, that you don't need to know everything. You don't need to be everything for everyone. And you get to live your best life.
Yes. Amen. I couldn't have said that better. It was so funny when you said that. I'm like, okay, they got to be curious, not critical. And you said it. I was like, yes, we're vibing tonight, brother. We are vibing tonight. Because that is so true. So true. So thank you all for joining in with us again tonight. It's been such a pleasure to bring you guys even more stuff that you can use today. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. Ask yourself today, tonight, whatever time it is, wherever you're out in the world, what's one thing I need to start holding myself accountable to, and watch the results you get. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a great night. Joining us on this episode of Live Now with Veenu Keller and Chuck Hogan. follow us on Instagram at Veenu Inspires and at Chuck Hogan Now. For more about Veenu, please visit VeenuInspires.com. And for Chuck, please check out YBLNow.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.